On to this story now. Air pollution claims at least 7 million lives each year. The World Health Organization says the poorest communities are the most affected. Now, cities across the world have signed the C40 Clean Air Cities Declaration. It commits them to help citizens breathe. But how are cities in South Africa going to ensure that this happens? Well, we've got a discussion that's about to happen, and we're going to be bringing in Andre du Plessis, who's Ekurhuleni MMC for Environment and Waste Management, Katlego Mathebe, who's the City of Tshwane's MMC for Environment and Waste Management, and we've got Caradee Wright, a public health specialist at the Medical Research Council for this discussion. And it's an important one that we're about to be having. Thank you very much for your time. I'm going to start with you in studio with me, MMC, and it's just a matter of this declaration that has now been decided upon, and maybe just furnish us with some of the important details that come within it and the responsibility that cities have to carry out this particular declaration.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having us here. And I want to say that as the City of Tshwane, we have already started with the initiatives. And to date, I can share with you 3 achievements that we have implemented already. You'll notice that last year, March, the City of Tshwane promulgated the Air Quality Bylaw, which will assist us to regulate the air pollution. And also, we have 9 air quality monitoring stations across the City of Tshwane, which is assisting us to monitor the quality of air. And as well, we've got 40 buses, the CGS buses, which are using gas instead of fuel. And so far, that is what we have done to date. However, going forward, you are saying as the City of Tshwane, we would be establishing the air quality baseline, and will also determine reduction targets of air pollutant as outlined in our national environmental legislation. And to that effect, we have a draft air quality management plan that will be finalized before the end of this year, which regulates pollutants such as your particulate matter, which comes from your dust particle, and also the nitrogen dioxide, which comes from burning of tires and waste and things like that. So it's very important for communities to understand the sources of pollution. And other pollutants such as your sulfur dioxide, which comes from the diesel emission, those are things that would be regulated. And as a result, we would also continue to intensify compliance and enforcement and working with industries as well.
No, absolutely. MMC du Plessis, I want to bring you in at this point. In that, I want you to share some of the work that the city of Ekurhuleni has been doing in the same regard, in ensuring that citizens are living in the best environment as possible.
Thank you very much. Yes, and welcome everybody, and thank you for having me. It's indeed a pleasure to address you this morning. Our city has been very proactive in initiating certain projects. We have 119 informal settlements, and within these informal settlements we have a fair amount of people utilizing coal to cook and to survive. And we want to roll out some programs of putting up high mast lighting and also giving energy into the areas of these informal settlements to prevent a lot of the pollution emanating from these coal fires in the informal settlements. Furthermore, we're actually going to be introducing, well, we're still already busy with a bus rapid transport system, where we will have 286 kilometers of dedicated roads to assist with public transport and limit the amount of vehicles on the road. We're also addressing the illegal dumping. There's a lot of illegal dumping taking place. Within our 100-day program, we've already identified at least 1 hotspot, working now on 2 hotspots per ward. We have 112 wards throughout Ekurhuleni, and cleaning up the hotspots of this illegal dumping, because this illegal dumping also eventually leads to having these illegal dumping hotspots set alight, which then also creates an enormous amount of air pollution. One of the main issues we'll be addressing is, in fact, education. And I think throughout all communities within Ekurhuleni, we'll be rolling out educational programs to make the communities aware of the threats of air pollution into the various communities throughout Ekurhuleni. And we have started off with some physical projects on the ground, but education will be rolled out quite extensively within the next 3 years on an annual basis to alleviate this problem.
No, absolutely. Caradee, you've listened to both MMCs of the different cities, and surely through your engagements that you've had over a period of time, you've seen that there are many challenges to make sure that this is done well, but also that it does impact on various communities in different ways, and not necessarily in a good way, of course.
Yeah, that's correct. So thanks very much for having me here today. Greetings to both MMCs. Air pollution is a major problem in South Africa. The MMCs have touched on a number of the key sources of air pollution that we have to be worried about in our cities, including transport, domestic solid fuel burning, the dust from mines and unpaved roads, and industrial emissions, just to name a few. Illegal waste burning is certainly an enormous problem that does need to be tackled, because all of these pollutants combined pose a direct impact to human health and well-being.
No, absolutely. MMC, you've spoken about some of the initiatives that you've taken on and the work that you've done in the city of Tshwane to make things happen. But there are infrastructure issues that still exist, things that would prevent the efficiency of the different changes to take place. How are you tackling that in particular?
All right. With the 3-year plan that we have approved on Thursday, I can confirm that as a city, we'll be setting aside 430 million rand over the next 3 years to electrify 16,500 households, meaning that we'll also be continuing with formalization of informal settlements, and we'll be using the grant, the USDG grant, to do the formalization of informal settlement. And the advantage of doing formalization of informal settlement is that would be reducing dust, because when you put people in formalized structures, you tar the road, you put them in specific plots so that they can have access to electricity and water. So, and also minimizing the amount of burning of wood, so that you reduce the PM 2.5 as well. And the other things that we'll also be doing is education. We've already started with an air pollution environment in schools and in our various communities. We'll be continuing with that. And we've also set aside 701 million rand over the next 3 years to improve on waste collection services. And that will also include reducing to a very significant level the illegal dumping. And with illegal dumping, we also have the Adopt a Sport bylaw, wherein we encourage communities to get involved in cleaning up their own communities and focus on greening their areas. And we as a city are working with communities to achieve exactly that.
Yeah, I mean, MMC du Plessis, I want to bring you in there to speak about those infrastructure issues and the plans to clear out the informal settlements and the education of people about air pollution. They're all grand, but obviously this takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. And I want you to weigh in on that particular point, MMC du Plessis, but then I want Caradee to come in there and just, you know, be frank about the conversation, in that all these things take a lot of time. I mean, unfortunately, with the climate change crisis that we're seeing, there isn't a lot of time.
Yes, indeed, I must agree. It is a large task ahead of us, but we're up to it. And we're formulating plans at the moment. It's a new initiative to tackle the informal settlements and do education there. But another interesting facet that we'll be rolling out in this financial year already is in the township areas. We have a hang of a lot of backyard dwellers. And these backyard dwellers are not linked to our refuse removal system. And we'll be rolling out additional wheelie bins to these backyard dwellers to also prevent the additional illegal dumping that happens within these areas. So if we have a control system of collecting this waste instead of it being dumped on the sidewalks and creating those stockpiles of illegal dumping that are sometimes satellite, that is a program we're rolling out currently within this financial year, together with education.
No, absolutely. And Caradee, you were nodding your head furiously a little while ago with the insights that were coming out. Just your thoughts on what's been shared there, and just my concern that I've raised in my question to MMC du Plessis is that these things are absolutely essential, the education, the dealing with the informal settlements because of the climate change crisis. But the time in which things are done is not necessarily favourable for anybody.
Yes, so all of these points are really important, and both cities have made very ambitious plans. To execute such plans requires capacity and obviously resources and functioning bodies at the correct levels, or organization of people who are responsible for operationalizing these activities within communities. So that's definitely going to be a challenge. The other challenge that I would very much like to raise is that air pollution is not confined to the walls, so to speak, of the city or the boundary of the cities. We also have to consider regional air pollution. So in other words, somehow, according to the C40 Cities Air Quality Declaration, we have to think more broadly about regional impacts. So for example, both Ekurhuleni and city of Tshwane are affected by air pollution that's generated on the Highveld priority area of South Africa. So we're going to need a collective approach working wider than just the cities themselves to see any long-term reduction in air pollution among the cities.
Now, MMC du Plessis, I want to come back to you in the collaboration and the partnership element. Of course, this is a continental agreement that's been reached. Are you learning from other cities across the continent on how to conduct certain programs? Are you having engagements and sharing ideas and plans and projects?
Yes, thank you very much indeed. This is obviously in its infancy stages, and we have possible plans to link up with all these cities that can participate and assist us. And we're open to suggestions from not only international neighbours, but also our local neighbours right here in Gauteng, who all have our individual but very similar problems. And as you spoke about the Highveld priority area, we have to work in synergy with our surrounding cities to address that. And obviously the situation that we are faced with around here is the existing mine dumps. Those mine dumps, just with the prevailing winds, just blow into different communities all the time, creating all kinds of serious health hazards. So we'll be not only working directly here with our within our city, we'll also be working with our counterparts, our surrounding cities in and around Gauteng, and then gaining additional information and guidance from international cities who've had these best practices in place for a while. So yes, we look very forward to it. It's exciting, and it's going to be a really good program to roll out into our city in the future.
No, absolutely. And MMC Mathebe, it's such an important point that MMC du Plessis brings up there in terms of mine dumps. Surely there's a responsibility on departments, local, provincial, national governments to put some accountability on companies operating within your cities so that they are able to not only take accountability but follow the laws that you are implementing within the creation of a space where you are protecting the air that your citizens are breathing.
Correct. And I must say that when it comes to environmental issues, I must say that it's very comforting to see how province, national and local government are working together.
Yes.
And at the level of the city, we will continue to conduct webinars with industry to encourage them to migrate to energy efficient, cleaner manufacturing technologies. And those are conversations that we've been having with industry, and we will continue to have those conversations with industry, because even for them to operate legally in the space, they know that they have to apply for the license,
yes,
which we issue. And in the city, I'm very confident that majority of the industries that are operating, they do operate those licenses. And for those that don't operate within the regulatory framework, we do have ground trooping, meaning our own scorpions on the ground, checking those industries that might not be registered. And I must say that we do find them and we encourage them to register. So the first point is to give them a notice to encourage them to register. And so far, most of the companies around Tshwane are compliant to the license that have been issued. We have a few that are not, but we have a very effective team of scorpions that are working on the ground to make sure that there is compliance all the time.
That's a very encouraging answer, Caradee, that the MMC has just shared with us. But just based on your research and your engagements, particularly with different communities, are you satisfied that companies, in as much as governments have to do so, are playing their part to ensure that the livelihoods of people are protected against such things as air pollution?
That's a certainly tricky question. I know that the cities are working very hard to ensure that minimum emission standards are met according to atmospheric emission licenses. Of course, we have this at national level, and I see that the city of Ekurhuleni, for example, has also got a plan to consider revising their minimum emission standards. They would need to align with national, for example. We must also remember that we have national ambient air quality standards. These are almost aligned or try to align with the interim targets of the World Health Organization's air quality guidelines, so that we can strive towards reaching lower levels of pollution in our cities to protect human health and well-being. The mention of industry and those controls is good, so long as that they are enforced. As MEC from City of Tshwane was speaking, there are a lot of industries that I think are informal and potentially more difficult to control. And an important thing that I wanted to mention around the essential need to electrify informal settlements and other areas that do not have electricity is this needs to be done within the framework of the Presidential Climate Commission Just Transition Strategy, because we really are aiming for a better linkage between air quality management and climate change management for sustainability overall. And there are co-benefits in doing so for public health.
No, absolutely. Thank you very much for your insights. There's so much more to unpack with this particular conversation, but unfortunately, we've run out of time. MMCs, thank you very much. That was MMC Andre du Plessis, who's the Ekurhuleni MMC for Environment and Waste Management. We had MMC Katlego Mathebe, who's from the City of Tshwane, and she's also there part of the Environment and Waste Management Department. And then we had Caradee Wright, a public health specialist at the Medical Research Council.